All right, we're on. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about we've had a little technical difficulties to get this thing started here this morning for you guys. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a great day today. Welcome. I am the F-86 Sabre virtual pilot, not a real pilot, but a virtual pilot. Um, as we talk to you guys today, as we thank you guys for being here along the way here today. We thank you guys for being here. Wait a second. Am I on the wrong channel? Nope, I'm not. Okay. I wasn't sure. Just wanted to make sure that I wasn't on the wrong channel. We thank you guys for being here today. Thanks for being a part of today's channel. Hope you guys are having a great day this morning. We thank you guys for being here and taking your time to watch today's presentation, guys. We are doing this one as the F-86 today. The F-86 Sabre, as you see behind me, this plane right here is a um, North American F-86 Sabre. Sometimes it's called Sabre Jet. Um, Sabre Jet is absolutely one of those fighter planes, that they use for dogfighting. The Sabre is best known as the United States' first swept wing fighter aircraft. Could counter the swept Soviet MiG-15, so it could actually take out the MiG. If you're not careful with you're not careful with the F-86, or if you're not careful, if you're the MiG pilot, you got to be extra careful because it can actually take out the Soviet MiG. And the Korean War, and it can chase out a MiG-15 in the high-speed dogfight chase in the skies of the Korean War in 1950 and 1953. Fighting fighting some of the earliest jet-to-jet battles in history, considered one of the best, most important aircraft of the war, which was the F-86, which is behind me right here, the F-86 Sabre. The Superfit Sabre, guys, is one of those most highly modified aircraft. It is one of the best aircraft. Although it was as the aircraft was developed in 1940s, guys, it was outdated by the end of 1950. So the Sabre jet was also outdated in the late 1940s. So then, or at the end of 1950, the Sabre provided versatile, versatile and adaptable, and continued and as a frontline fighter in numerous air force. So the fighter jet, the MiG, which is behind me, is a beautiful aircraft. It is a major fighter plane. Um, it is a great fighter jet, numerous planes. It can take out anybody if you're not careful with it. The fighter jet was absolutely successful in the Korean War when it was fighting. It was uh, it was used as the heritage flight over Davis Monthan Air Force Base. Its success led to extend production run of more than 7,800 aircraft between 1949 and 1956. So the Sabre was absolutely a fast airplane. If you think about how fast the airplane was, most of the planes you see are fast. Most of them are modified to be um, whatever. But as you guys could tell there, it was manufactured by the North American Aviation Company, which absolutely gives the look and the feel of being in an F-86 Sabre. Its success led to an extended production run of more than 7,800 aircraft between 1949 and 56, what I said. In the United States, Japan, and Italy, in addition, 738 carrier modified versions were purchased by the U.S. as FJ2s and F3s. So variants were built in Canada and Australia, and Canadian Air Sabre added another 1,815 to its list of aircraft, which was part of the F-86 Sabres modified. The Sabre by far is the most produced Western jet fighter, with a total production of all variants of 9,860 units in the country. I mean, that's all, it's all in the country. So if you think about it, the F-86 is more popular than what you can anticipate it. So the more that more with that aircraft, it was amazing. North American Aviation also provided the P-51 Mustang, which you guys will see later on in the week. North American Aviation has produced the propeller-powered P-51 Mustang. If you know what the Mustang is in World War II, it was powered. It was excuse me. Excuse me. Hold on. All right. Which saw combat against some of the first optional jet fighters. So the P-51 actually saw its first jet in 1944, which was the P-51 Mustang in World War II. Now, if you believe it or not, guys, that the P-51 Mustang was very amazing airplane, which everybody loves. Everybody loves the Mustang. North American proposed its first fighter jet to the U.S. Navy, which became the FJ-1 Fury. So that was the first fighter jet that was proposed to the first fighter jet in America, was the FJ-1 Fury. So it was unexpected, traditional jet fighter that had a straight wing, derived from the P-51. Initial proposal to meet a United States Air Force requirement from a medium-range, single-seat, high-altitude jet powered escorted by the fighter jets, but were drafted in the mid-1944. So when they were escorted, they were all of a sudden the planes were just coming. So you get like the fighter plane, then you get people on the outside, which is escorting them. They just coast along right next to them, and if they do see their enemy get shot down, then they start shooting right back at the enemy, trying to get them out of the air. That's what escorting is. It's protection of the aircraft. Um, in the early 1940s, North American Aviation submitted for designs. The USAAF selected one design over others, which was granted by the P-51 Mustang. North American P-51 contract to build 3 examples of the P-86 or XP-86 experimental pursuit, deleting specific requirements from the FJ-1 Fury, coupled with the modifications, allowed the XP-86 to be lighter and considerably much lighter than the other aircrafts. So the other aircraft would be a lot heavier. It's a lot lighter to fly. Some airplanes are really heavy to fly. This plane would be the easiest. It's the most lightest and faster too. So you take the fast speed and just roar it. I mean, just cruise with it. So design were more advanced in their development. It was feared that the XP-86 would be canceled. So people were afraid that the XP-86 was going to be canceled because of, you got the P-51, you got the F-86. Usually, they're not going to be canceled unless they just don't work anymore. The XP-86 was not able to meet required top speed of 600 to 97 knots, which is really fast for an airplane. It is super fast for an airplane. North American had to quickly design a radial change that leapfrog its rivals. The F-86 was the first American aircraft to take advantage of research and data from Germany at the end of World War II. Um, it was one of those planes that you always got. If you were the enemy, you would be afraid of that aircraft in World War II because of the fighting of it. Um, so the aircraft um, is more capable of high-speed chases and dogfights and stuff like that. Problems that they had with fighters such as the Lockheed P-38 when approaching the speed sound by 1944, German engineers and designers had established the benefits of swept wings based on experimental designs dating back to 1940. A study of data showed that a swept wing would solve their speed problem while a slate on the wing's leading edge that extended at low speeds would enhance low speed stability. So the plane apparently was stable, but it wasn't as stable as you wanted it to be. So what you want to have is the capability of stabilized when you're flying. So you're flying an airplane, it has to be stabilized if you want to fly. So that's the capability of that. A study of the data showed because of development of the XP-86 had reached an advanced stage, the idea of changing the sweep, the wing, was met with resistance from some senior North American staff despite the other aircraft. So they wanted the wings kind of like folded back a little bit to make it look more. Um, they came up with so much interesting facts about it. Good results were abandoned tunnel tests. So they tested all the tunnels to make sure that stuff was flowing smoothly when you're flying in the airplane. Um, I will move out of the way so you guys can see what the F-86 looks like. So this is the F-86 view right here. This is the F-86. This is the wings of it. And um, it is a very high-speed type of aircraft, which was absolutely very fast. It is a fast modified aircraft. It was good for dogfighting. Um, then all of a sudden you came up with the Messerschmitt ME-262, and electrical adjustable stabilizer. So it automatically, so if something ever went wrong with your airplane and you started feeling like you're going straight in, it'll stabilize it, is what I thought it says right there. Another feature of the ME-262A mini sabers had the 6.3 wing, a fixed leading edge of 6-inch extended cord, and a root and a 3-inch extended cord off the wingtips. Um, and so that was what the F-86 is trying to compete. So if you try to do something with the F-86, you do want it to be stabilized as much as possible. The XP-86 prototype, which led the F-86 Sabre, was rolled out on the 8th of August 1947. The first flight occurred, so the first flight of the Sabre, which is this plane right here, which I can show you guys again, was first flown in 19 was first flown in 1947 with uh, George Welsh, who was at the controls flying the Muroc Dry Lake, now Edwards Air Force Base, California. The United States Air Force had F-86 Sabres in service from 1949 through 1950. So it was only a year that it was in service. So uh, this bird behind me is just beautiful. So it was in service from 1949 till 1950. The F-86 were assigned to the 22nd Bomb Wing, the first fighter wing, and the first fighter incorporate wing. So the F-86 was part of the corporate team. The F-86 was a primary U.S. air combat fighter during the Korean War, which was, like I was saying before, it is a super fast plane, so it can take down any Korean aircraft. If you're not careful, you can absolutely fight with it, and it does work. It is an amazing airplane. It does go through its stages. Um, with sophisticated numbers of the first three production models seeing the combat, the F-86 was also produced under a license by Canadian Ltd. and the Canadian Sabre. The final variant of the Canadian Sabre, the Mark 6, is generally rated as having the highest capabilities of any Sabre in this version. There's so many different versions of the F-86. Okay, the F-86 is more. It's a popular airplane. It's a popular airplane in the war, or whatever you want to call it. As you guys take a look at the most unique aircraft, staying focused on the F-86. It is a huge process. It's a big deal. The airplane is great. Then sometimes now you see some of them like perform in air shows. You see some of them do so much. You see them perform in air shows. You see them in Warbird shows. Um, you see them flying all over. The F-86A, now it's the A. It's not the other one. The F-86A can break the sound barrier, set its official world speed of record of 671 miles per hour, which is 671 knots, which is absolutely fast for a fighter jet. I mean, so that's the F-86A. Okay, so there's so many F-86s. There's F-86 whatever. Then there's the A, and Mach 2 or something, whatever you call it. Um, on September 15th, 1948, at Muroc Dray Lake, flown by Major Richard L. Johnson, USAF. 5 years later, on May 18th, 1953, Jacqueline Cochran became the first woman to break the sound barrier. So she was the first one to break the sound barrier in the F-86A, which is not the F-86, but it's the F-86A. Became the first woman to break the sound barrier flying a one-off Canadian-built F-86 Sabre MKE or MK3 alongside Chuck Yeager. Colonel K.K. Copton won the 1950 Bendix Air Race in the F-86, which he averaged about 553.76 miles per hour, which that is really fast for a Sabre. Don't get me wrong, that's really fast. On February 2nd, 1958, a team of Pakistan Air Force F-86 Sabres called Falcons set a world record at PAF base Massarool by performing a loop while in a 16 aircraft diamond formation. The team was led by the wing commander Zafar Massoud. So they had a team, apparently 16 teams, that made it upside down. That's interesting stuff right there. Remember, guys, this is a study guide for you too, so you guys are studying about this. The F-86 was produced as a both fighter incorporate and fighter bomber. Several variants were introduced over the production life with improvements into different armament and plat. See below. The XP-86 was filled a General Electric J35C5 jet engine. So the F-86, which is behind me right here, this beautiful bird, had improvements to its electrical. with the jet engine, so it makes it feel like it's more powerful that way. The jet engine that produced 4,000 pounds of thrust. This this engine was built by GM's Chevrolet division until production was turned over to Allison. The General Electric J47 JE7 engine was used in the F-86A. So there's an A and there's a B and there's a C, and producing a thrust of 5,200 pounds of thrust, while the electric J74JE3 engine of the F-86H produced 9,250 miles per hour of thrust, which carries a lot of stuff like that if you're flying an F-86. Now, um, you've seen F-86 Sabres before, like the one behind me right now, guys. This plane is absolutely beautiful. I can't tell you guys enough about it. It is a beautiful plane. The fighter bomber, it is a fighter bomber. They call it a fighter bomber. We call it a fighter bomber. It is truly an amazing. It's an amazing thing. We all like the F-86. Um, the fighter bomber version of the F-86H. Okay, so there's an H too. So the H could carry up to 2,000 pounds of bombs, including an external fuel tank type tank that could carry napalm. Unguided 2.75 inches, 7 millimeter rockets were used on some fighters in the training mission that they have done overseas back in the when they were training pilots on like how to fly and how they get everything all grouped up. They just launched them um, uh, training, but 5 inches, 127 millimeter rockets were later carried to combat operations. The F-86 could also be fitted with a pair of external jet fuel tanks. So they do have tanks, which tip tanks off the wings, which that's how they get their fuel. Um, they extended the range of the aircraft. Both have fighter bombers. Versions carried 6. Um, with they had so much fuel. Front of the aircraft using let's see here. The transition to the Sabre swept wings and jet engines saw many accidents and incidents since even experienced pilots. So pilots that were flying in these Sabres, they'd have had mechanical problems, and luckily some of them have ejected from the ejection seat. Some of them didn't make it, which is too bad and very sad to talk about. Um, but pilots had learned new heading techniques and flying characteristics early on the jet age. Some U.S. manufacturers instituted safety, so they took the planes up. They did a lot of maintenance on them. They do a lot of secure on them. They do stuff like that to try to prevent stuff from happening. Um, as F-86 models continued to be upgraded, which they upgraded from from the Sabre to now the Super Sabre. Upgrade the learning process. Continued important design changes include switching from the elevator stabilizer to an all flying tail. Um, the of leading edge lights for a solid wing, small forward mounted wing, increased fuel capability. They did hold a lot of fuel when they were flying and doing combat with it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Korean War and how that all started. The F-86 entered service with the USAF in 1949, joining the first Fighter Wing 94 Fighter Squadron, and became the primary air-to-air fighter jet. So they how that all works is so the Sabre in 1949 joined up with another American fighter jet that was became uh, the same American style. So they were flying together. They met up with each other. Americans in the Americans in the Korean War, while earlier straight-wing jets such as the P-80 and F-84 intentionally achieved air victories. So a lot of those planes have shot down the other aircraft. They did rolls, they did barrel rolls, they did stuff like that for victory. When you do a victory roll, you pull up like that, you crank it, you put that stick over upside down. That's how that all occurs. Um, with that, when the swept wing MiG-15 was introduced in November of 1950, it outperformed all UN-based aircraft. Which includes the F-86. They grounded them because the MiG-15 was introduced in November 1950. People were excited about it. They were like, "Oh, maybe this is more powerful than um, how you have the MiG and the F-86 Sabre." We welcome you into the broadcast, everybody that is tuning in. Hey, Raph, what's up, buddy? Um, in response, in response, 3 squadron of F-86 were rushed to the farm models and ceiling. Firepower, exclusive power, turning rate of climb, and ability to zoom climb. So when the F-86 comes along, comes along and just like rockets straight up in the air. So zoom climb, it just keeps climbing. The F-86 was marginally faster and could not dive the MiGs. So like the MiGs were coming like this, the F-86 right on his tail, get out of my way, get out of my way. Boom! Like they dive after him and they just pull up. The F-86 is a lot faster on their defense, and they're keeping their eye out for that. Um, when the F-86 was introduced in 1953, the two aircraft became more closely matched, and by the end of the war, many American combat experienced pilots were claiming a marginal superiority for the F-86F. So there's an F, there's an H, um, there's a Super Sabre. There's Super Sabres that are very fast. Okay, so you take the F-86. You just imagine this: the F-86. If you're flying a MiG-15 right behind him, he's coming right after him on his tail, and then try to get him out of the way. He's going down. You're diving him like this. He pulls out, and you just you chase him all the way down. So you're a lot faster than the MiG-15. The heavier firepower of the MiG and many other uh, contemporary fighters was addressed by Project Gunvale, which saw the combat testing of 787 of F-86 F-2s. Despite being able to fire only 2 from 20 mm, was a Browning .05 caliber in the air-to-air roll. Just imagine that. Now that is some fascinating stuff right there. If you guys can't believe it, bro, the SU. Yes, I do. I know that one, but we're not. We're just doing stuff that is scheduled on my list. Uh, but I have heard about it. Although the F-86A could be safely flown through March 1st, so they were safely flying through March 1st. The F-86E, all moving till plane, greatly improved maneuverability at high speed. So they actually upgraded the F-86. They upgraded the F-86 and just started going like chop, 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 chop. Let's get going on this thing. Let's see how fast we can make this thing go. So they get up to a certain amount of speed, which is amazing. The MiG-15s could not safely exceed Mach 0.92. So they couldn't get that fast. They can't go that fast. They couldn't reach up to that fast speed. Important disadvantage in near sonic air combat. Far greater emphasis had been have been given to the training aggressives versus experienced pilots of the F-86 Sabres. American Sabre pilots were trained at Nellis, where the casualty rate of their training was so high. A lot of these pilots were trained, and like the MiG, it couldn't get up to its Mach 0.92 like I was talking about. The Mach is very quick in how much G-forces you pull. So they couldn't reach that amount. If you ever see the flag at full staff, take a picture. Despite rules encouragement to the country, F-86 units frequently entitled to combat over MiG base in the Macaroon, however, sanctuary. In October 1951, the Soviets managed to recover a downed Sabre, and the investigation of the type, they concluded that the Sabre's advantage in combat was due to the APG-30 gun sight that facultated accurate fire at long range. So if you're taking a guy way up in front of you, like way up in front of you, he can get you from way back here. I mean, like from way back, way back. I mean, it's like, boom, get him down. The deployment of the MiGs and the Sabres, guys, the needs of combat operations balanced against the need to maintain and force structure in the Western Europe led to the conversation of the 51st Fighter Wing, which was from the F-80 to the F-86. So in December 1951. So they were originally the F-80 Sabres instead of the F-81. My grandfather worked in the Indian Air Force on the Vision Bird with the pilots. Oh, interesting. I will take your questions when I'm done, though. That is interesting. Thank you for telling me. From the F-80 to the F-86 in 1951, two fighter bomber wings, the 8th and 18th converted to the F-86 in the spring of 1953. Number 2 Squadron, South African Air Force, also discussed its flying F-86 in Korea as part of the 18th Fighter Bomb Wing. So they were all introduced then. The MiGs flown from the base of Manchuria by Chinese, North Korean, and Soviet VVS pilots were pitted against the 2 squadrons of the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing forward base at K-14 Kimpo, Korea. The North Koreans and their allies prodigally contested air support in Meg Alley. There's an area near the mouth of Yalu River, the boundary of between Korea and China, over which the most intense air-to-air combat took place. So that's where the MiGs and the F-86 went up over that river. What I just said, the Yalu River, it's the boundary between Korea and China. That's where the most intense combat was that took place for the combat. On 17th of June 1951 at 1:30, Suwon Air Base was bombed by 2 Politiprobe PO-2 biplanes who each dropped a pair Raymond bombs. One scored on a hit on a 802nd Engineer Aviation motor pool, damaging some equipment, and it just erupted. The elevation of the F-86 by the end hospitalities, the F-86 pilots were created by American sources, was shooting down 792 MiGs. So the Sabre right here, absolutely shot down 792 MiGs for a loss of only 78 Sabres in the air combat. So they lost 78 Sabres and they shot down 792. Think about that. Do that in your head, guys. It's math. Do that in your head or use a calculator. What do you guys think about that? So they shot down 792 MiGs for a loss of only 78 Sabres in air combat. A victory ratio of 10.1 of the 41 American pilots who earned the designation of ace during the Korean War, all but one flew the F-86 Sabre. The expansion being a Navy Fu Corsair fighter pilot. However, After the war, the USAF reviewed its figures in investigating codename Saber Measure. So they came up with a name for the Saber, so they called it Saber Measure Charlie. So Saber Measure Charlie and a downgrade the kill retro of the North American F-86 Saber against the Milcoin Gruvovich MiG-15 by half, 2.5.1. The U.S. accepted that its pilots had and actually down about 200 MiGs. So potentially they just kept coming in. They just kept coming in and just kept shooting down the. They just kept shooting down the MiGs to get them out of the air, because they wanted to protect our country. Soviet data records only 335 MiG-15s lost in Korea. So 335 MiGs were lost in the Korean dogfight between the MiGs and the F-86. You're welcome. I hope you're learning a lot. This is each day we get new planes. Tomorrow we have a Huey. We'll be doing a Huey talk tomorrow. The Chinese claims of their losses amount to 224 MiG-15s in Korea. So they were upset that they lost 225 or 224 MiGs. They weren't happy about the loss. It did not go the way they wanted to. They weren't too happy about it. Korean loss are not known, but according to North Korean defectors, their Air Force lost around 100 MiG-15s during the war, so they lost about 100 MiGs in the war. The 659 MiG-15s are being lost. Many of these losses are to the F-86 Saber that were, like I said, they were fast. They couldn't keep up with the MiG-15s. The MiG-15s try to come. They try to come around, they try to fly. Didn't go so well for them. So although these can't be recalled with the number of Sabres record as lost by the U.S., there was about 211 F-86 Sabres were shot down. So, of course, the F-86 Sabres were shot down by the MiG-15s, which I don't know how in the world that happened, but it just randomly happened. Welcome in, Jiba. If you do have any questions after this presentation, let me know what you guys have any questions about. Bye, bro. I'm going to bed. Okay, take care. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for watching a little preview. We'll be doing this for the rest of the week. Suggested reasons for the F-86 success include the fact that many of American pilots experienced World War II veterans, while the North Koreans and the Chinese lacked combat experience. So the F-86 was more powerful, of course, like I said, were more powerful than the MiG-15s. Despite that, more MiG-15s than F-86 were shot down in the air combat later in the war. North Korean and Chinese pilots increased their participation as combat fighters, so they knew they were good pilots. But they knew they had good pilots, but it didn't work the way they wanted to. The status of many claimed to air victories in the Korean War has been debated as more data becomes available, showing that intents of overclaiming abundant on both sides. The research by Dower, Lake, and Thompson claimed the F-86 kill ratio closer to 2.1. Then all of a sudden you have, however, the radio did not count the number of aircraft of other types, including the B-29, A-26, the F-80, the F-82, F-84, the glow star meter shot down by MiG-15 pilots. That's a big loss for our guys. Data matching with Soviet records suggests that U.S. pilots routinely afforded their own combat losses by landing accidents and other causes, according to the official U.S. data. So you can think that, and 66 were also incidents. South American Air Force lost 6 F-86 in the war. So they lost about F-86. They lost about 6 of their F-86 in the war. That gives 256 confirmed F-86 losses during the Korean War. So it's amazing how kind of stuff you can hear about all this stuff here. I hope you guys are learning stuff. I hope you learn about new stuff every day. Pakistan Air Force in 1954, Pakistan started receiving the first of a total of 102 F-86F Sabres. So they claimed, or they started receiving 102 F-86 Sabres. Moreover, in April 1959, a PAF F-86F flown by Flight Lieutenant Yunus of the number 15 Squadron Cobras shot down an Indian Canberra spy plane over Rawalpindi, marking the first aerial victory for the Pakistan Air Force. So that's they take over and do stuff of the F-86. Now the ground attack, guys, is something amazing. Now the F-86 remained a patent aircraft for the use against ground targets. So like they're looking for targets like tanks or whatever you can think of. They just dive bomb, boom, 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 go like that, and squad number the 6th morning on the morning of September 6th, 1965, 6 F-86 of number 19 Squadron struck advanced columns of the Indian Army using 5 in M127 mm rockets along with their 6 50M has been struck there. The Philippine Air Force now with the F-86. No, you get the F-86, you got the P-51 Mustangs. But so far, before we continue doing this, does anybody have any questions? I'll be more than happy to answer your questions right now. Any questions from anybody? Before we talk about the Soviet Sabre and the Philippine Air Force? Any questions? Okay. The Philippine Air Force. The Philippine Air Force first received the Sabres in the form of F-86Fs in 1957. So the Philippines have got their F-86Fs in 1957, replacing the North American P-51 Mustang. So they had the Mustang for a while up until 1957. That was replaced by the P-51s. They did get the F-86s as the primary interceptor. F-86s first operated from Basa Air Base, known infamously as the Nest of Vipers. Where the fifth wing of the PAF was, excuse me, was based later on in 1960. The PAF acquired the F-86D model as the first all-weather interceptor. So they did have those F-86s. They did launch those planes. They launched them. They got them up to their height there. They got them up to their flying They went around, they were checking out and seeing if there was any weather prohibited in the area. If they did see weather, they would have to call back their base and say, "Attention, we do have weather moving in." So that's how that works. The most notable use of the F-86 Sabres was in the Blue Diamonds aerobatic display team, which operated 8 Sabres until the arrival of a newer supersonic Northrop F-5 that actually is now the newer version of the F-86. Were phased out of the service in the 1970s as the North Northrop F-5 Freedom, a fighter, and Vought F-8 Crusaders became the primary fighters and inceptors of the PAF. Antonio Batusta was a Blue Diamond pilot and decoy officer. He was killed on 11th of January 1974 during a combat sortie against rebels in the southern of the country. Um, so they did have an aerobatic team called the Blue Diamonds that were part of the Sabre team. But then they went into the F5 Northrop F5s. During the Korean War, the Soviets searched for an intact U.S. F-86 Sabre for elevation and study purposes, was largely frustrated due to the U.S. military policies. There has been a lot of Soviet was frustrated with our F-86 Sabres. With their policies, destroying disabled or abandoned weapons and equipment, with the USAF pilots destroying most of their downed Sabres. So they weren't happy that we took out their Sabres during the fight of the Korean War. By strafing or bombing one, F-86 was down in title of substance providing its destruction. The aircraft was ferried to Moscow and new OKB Soviet experimental design Peru was established to study the F-86. Later became a Sukhoi OKB. At least one F-86 was sent to the Soviet Union. The Russians admitted that other planes and prizes such as US G-suits and radar gun sights also went. The Soviet Union studied and copied the same thing what we have with the F-86. Now, let me read you guys off this thing now, or tell you guys about this. 3 prototypes are originally designed XP-86 North American model. So there's a F-86A, there's a XF-86, there's a F-86A, there's also a DF-86A, a RF-86A. The F-86A 554 built North American model and a Fit 151 F-86A 1 block and first order of A5 block and NA 161 second F-86 block. Let's see. Then the F-86F operated engine, larger 6'3" wing without leading edge lights, 2,239 built North American model, and a for the F-35. Now that's the newest fighter. The F-35 block had conventions for a new optional rule technical fighter using newer, smaller, and lighter. The F-40 had a new slated wing. Let's see here. Okay, so here's we got some different types. Now they have so they have the Super Saber, which is Super Saber. Two types based on the U.S. F-86F were built under license by the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation in Australia for the Royal Australian Air Force. Is the CA-26-1 prototype. The RAAF operated the CA-27 from 1956 to 1971, so they've been building those more. The CAC Sabres included 60% of the fuselage were resigned to augment the rolls, which had roughly 50% more thrust than the J-47 as well as 30 mm8 in Canada. The F-86 was also manufactured by Canadair in Canada as the CL-13 Sabre to replace the de Havilland Vampires. With the de Havilland Vampires that were in Canada, with the following, they had some that were ended there. So does anybody have any questions on today's presentation? Anybody have any questions on what I talked about today? Any questions? I am up for questions here, guys. Any updates? Does anybody have any questions? Any questions from anybody? Jeeba, you got any questions? So any questions from anybody? We have 3 people here, 3 likes. If we don't have any questions, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of this. Hope you guys enjoyed this little presentation. We have more throughout the week. Tomorrow, I think tomorrow's event is the Huey helicopter. So thank you guys. If you have no questions, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, guys.